So it's a bit weird because obviously the Jewish angle on this is that Jesus isn't Messiah because he didn't fulfill the thing because they were expecting someone to come back and be all warlike. But here it says that person won't be like that. So, yeah, I don't quite know how Judaism would reconcile. This would seem to be pretty explicit that whoever's coming is not going to be a great big warrior or anything. This week I have read the full book of Hosea, I don't know how you say it, but whatever it says on the thumbnail. I've read all that, chapters 1 to 14, and this is my summary, so you don't have to read it. Interestingly, this takes us into the last section of the Old Testament now. So we've got 12, I think it's 12 more prophets to go. Most of them very, very short. This one's quite long, actually, but there's not a huge amount in it. So we are properly in the home straight now to finish off the Old Testament. One of the problems I perceive here is it's going to get confusing because we're going to cover a lot of people in a short space of time, and they're all spread out over probably about 400 years. So I've found this fantastic thing on the internet which actually helps to explain. So you can see here on the top is the Israel line of things, the Israel kings, and you can see where it ends there in around 700 BC with the fall to Assyria. And on the bottom is the Judah line, which carries on for a bit longer before it's then whacked by Babylon. Most of these prophets we're going to be doing the next few weeks are, well, it's quite a short period, I think, are in these bottom bits. So you can see where Hosea, I'm going to go with Hosea. I think that seems right. Somewhere between 750 and 700 BC, or rather 700 and 750 BC, because obviously the BC thing is backwards, which is just to confuse everybody. This one does contain lots of prophecy about the doom and demise, but it seems to be in more general terms. So it doesn't seem anybody argues that this was written when it says it was written. I think basically on the grounds that it doesn't have any specifics about what's coming particularly. But Hosea, I'm going to have to stick with it. Hosea, we're going to go with. It's the problem with reading a book is you don't actually know how to pronounce things, but there we go. So Hosea has a very unfortunate job because God decides to use him to illustrate a point. So he says that he should go and marry one of those terrible promiscuous women that the Old Testament talks about. And then he has to have children with her. And he has to name his kids things like not loved, in Hebrew, so not actually the name, and not my people, stuff like that. So he's got a really dodgy deal here. It's like, go and marry someone you probably don't want to marry, then have children with her and give them really terrible names. And then you're going to be this living embodiment of some sort of metaphor and warning to the Israelites, or rather the remaining Israelites, the Judahites. A very interesting part of this is that God says that Judah is going to be saved, but not by bow, sword or battle, etc. So it's a bit weird because obviously the Jewish angle on this is that Jesus isn't Messiah because he didn't fulfill the thing because they were expecting someone to come back and be all warlike. But here it says that person won't be like that. So, yeah, I don't quite know how Judaism would reconcile. This would seem to be pretty explicit that whoever's coming is not going to be a great big warrior or anything. Of mild interest, in chapter 8, verse 7, we have the origin of, or seemingly the origin of the phrase, reap the whirlwind, which in my head conjures images of Ed Harris in The Rock. But, yeah, it's amazing how many bits we have in everyday life come from the Bible. We then have God saying twice, so presumably he meant it, that he's been the Israelites' God since they left Egypt, which is, okay, that sort of makes sense. That's where the story goes back to. But it's a suggestion that he wasn't their God before. I suppose prior to that, I mean, because Noah and stuff and Abraham, that was all pre-Exodus and that sort of thing. So it seems a little bit odd that God's now saying that he was only the God of the Israelites from that point. But then I guess the Israelites to some extent didn't really exist until that point. But again, it's one of those bits that's quite difficult to reconcile. And I mean, you can do it, but it's always just that little bit untidy. Otherwise, though, it's basically a big, long, drawn-out example of what the Israelites have done wrong and how terrible they've been and that bad things are coming. Albeit it is softened to some extent, but it does talk about there will be an opportunity for redemption and God's desire that they do sort themselves out, albeit we know that they're not going to do that. That is basically it for the book of Hosea, though. So I was going to do probably 4 of these in one go, and then we've got Jonah after that, who is still quite a short book, but a little bit bigger. Or a bit, we tend to know the whole fish thing and all the rest of it, or whale fish, we'll see. Unfortunately, my OCD is not going to cope with this because it's going to mess up all the playlists and organisation of the channel. So I am actually going to do quick fire videos on each of the books individually. There's a slight complication as well, though, in that on the 11th of June, I'm doing a live event as an interview at a local church to talk about this. I need to finish the Old Testament by then, and ideally I'd like to have all the videos out by then. So I'm probably going to do a week of just releasing the last of the videos all in one go. For that reason, a little bit arbitrary, but admittedly also I'm quite keen to get onto the New Testament now. I'm sort of Old Testamented out after nearly 3 years. But yes, so after this one we've got Joel will be next, so I shall release that tomorrow. And yeah, we'll take it from there.